The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You are now logged into WarUp on the WPIAL, featuring your hosts, Greg Warnock and Jeff Upson. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Welcome into WarUp on the WPIAL. Greg Warnock alongside Jeff Upson, and back in the studio this week, Jeff. The weather, it's like a total 180, isn't it? I mean, last week we'd had all the snow coming in on Monday and Tuesday. It's like 60 degrees. I think I drove down here with my windows down. It was total 180.
I was worried about you, Greg. I was going to make sure. Was it too warm for you? Or was it, the road's too dry? I figure you're going to have some excuse, but I'm glad you're here. We were both had some busy days yesterday, but we're back in the studio on Monday, giving you the best coverage of the WPIAL.
No doubt about it. And we had a lot to go over as we get set for the section championships. Jeff's in his Tom Brady jersey. He's excited for the Super Bowl coming up.
Super excited.
It was kind of funny, actually. I was doing the Pitt Virginia Tech match yesterday for Pitt, and I can't remember what match it was, but they went out of bounds, went pretty aggressive. My broadcast partner, Kevin Wheeler, said, looks like it was roughing out of bounds or something. And I said, he didn't push Tom Brady.
Yeah, that's true. If you push Tom Brady, then it's automatically roughing. Yeah. I unfortunately missed all the games yesterday. But
for a good reason, right?
Well, for good reason, right? I was at Ohio State watching Iowa and Ohio State wrestle, which was really fun.
You see some of the premier WPIAL guys who are just doing a great job in college. Spencer Lee, Luke Pletcher, Michael Kemmer. Those guys are just flat-out studs in college, and Spencer Lee obviously made the most noise.
Yeah, I mean, it was a crazy match. It was a pretty insane environment. I mean, the atmosphere there at the Shot Center was amazing. I loved it. That was my first time there at that arena, and it was just – they did it really well, and obviously a lot of PA power there. Spencer and Mikey and Luke had some good matches, so definitely good to see the WPIAL well represented, especially Franklin Regional. I mean, heck, you got two guys there, former Franklin Regional Panthers, going at it for Iowa. So yeah, a lot of fun there.
Tayshan Campbell as well, also.
Yeah, Shan had a tough match with Marinelli, and I think he puts a few things together, and he could turn that match around. But overall, we never stop, Greg. It's just like everything, especially right now, we're in the thick of it.
Oh, no doubt about it. We got a lot to cover, and we'll have enough for the next couple of months as far as that goes. But let's get into the final week of the regular season around the WPIAL, and we'll start in AAA. 1A, the scores: Plum over Gateway 32-27, Penn Hills over Woodland Hills 35-18, Kiski over Armstrong 69-9. Kiski at 5-0, Armstrong 4-1, Plum 3-2, Gateway and Penn Hills both 1-3, Woodland Hills 0-5. Hempfield over Norwin 55-18, Greensburg-Salem over Latrobe 55-21, and Franklin Regional over Penn Trafford 58-15. Hempfield at 5-0, Greensburg-Salem 4-1, Franklin Regional 3-2, Latrobe 2-3, Norwin 1-4, Penn Trafford 0-5. So Section 1 this coming Wednesday will be at Hempfield. Hempfield will be taking on Armstrong at 6. Kiski will be wrestling Greensburg-Salem at 6. The winners taking on each other at 7:15. The losers wrestling in the third place match. The fifth place match will feature Franklin Regional and Plum at 7 o'clock, and that one will be at Franklin Regional if you're looking to go for that fifth place match. As far as Section 1 goes, we know Kiski, the favorite going into this one. Hempfield, though, we talk about them, and they dominated 1B, which 1B is usually the toughest subsection of any of the subsections in the WPIAL. It's going to be interesting to see how they match up with Kiski in a potential final.
Yeah, this is a match that I'm looking forward to, and Hempfield's quietly putting together a nice string of wins, as you said. Kiski comes in ranked number 5 in the state, and Hempfield is sitting at 17, undefeated Hempfield. They haven't lost a match. So definitely some big-time matchups here. Hempfield's got a lot of young guys, and of course Kiski with Isaac Reed back in the lineup. It's a different animal than it was earlier this year, but Hempfield's they're going to test them. This may be one of the best section matches in the finals if both these teams, which I do think both will advance there. I think it's going to be one of the premier matches of the sectional play here.
Yeah, and you look at Hempfield and talking to Vince DiAugustine at the PAW08 tournament. At that point, he thought his team was probably a step behind the Kiski, Kanamack, Waynesburg, Seneca Valley grouping that we've talked about all season long. But the way they have performed in 1B, I don't think they're that far behind.
No, I don't think so now. And you just got guys there that are not they're doing things that you weren't expecting them to do. Dalen Wood is wrestling really tough for them. Isaiah Vance at heavyweight, freshman heavyweight is picking up some nice wins. So they got some guys in there that are, what Luke Kemmer is going to give you. You know what to expect from him. Even Kyle Burkholder, you know what you're going to get from him. But these other guys that aren't the superstars, they're wrestling really tough. And again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. It's those guys, it's not the superstars that are determining how good your team is. It's that depth. It's that, second string guy maybe that's not giving up bonus points. Those are the guys that are make or break this. So Hempfield's in a good position. I think Kiski and Hempfield's going to be a good match.
And Isaac Reed being back for Kiski certainly helps. You talked about the heavyweight for Hempfield, but with Reed there, it kind of solidifies things for the Cavaliers. Subsection 2A, Connellsville defeats Bell Vernon 42-33. The big match here I thought was at 145. Colin Franks pinning Nico Kuntz. That's a toss-up match in my opinion, and if you end up winning that match for Bell Vernon, you end up winning the duel. So the 9-point swing ends up, or at least tying the match.
Yeah, that was a huge win for Connellsville.
A huge pin.
It was a huge pin, right? I mean, and Bell Vernon needed everything to go their way in that particular match. But even Brock Godson, I mean, I saw him at Escape the Rock, and he looked banged up. Something happened to him with his ankle, so I didn't even know if he was going to actually go. But yeah, Connellsville. That talk about that potential 9-point swing there. That was a big win for Franks.
Thomas Jefferson over West Mifflin 51-18. Albert Gallatin over McKeesport 53-24. Connellsville 5-0. Bell Vernon 4-1. Thomas Jefferson 3-2. Albert Gallatin 2-3. West Mifflin 1-4. McKeesport 0-5. 2B, Mount Lebanon over Baldwin 66-12. Upper St. Clair over Bethel Park 46-26. Peters Township over Ringgold 64-16. Peters Township 5-0. Upper St. Clair 4-1. Mount Lebanon 3-2. Bethel Park 2-3. Ringgold 1-4, and Baldwin 0-5. So Section 2 will be at Peters Township on Wednesday. Peters Township against Bell Vernon at 6 o'clock. Connellsville against Upper St. Clair. Winners at 7:15, third place at 7:15. The fifth place match will be Mount Lebanon against Thomas Jefferson at 7 o'clock at Mount Lebanon. Winner into the team tournament. Peters Township, Bell Vernon should be a good one, and the winner will likely face Connellsville.
Yeah, I agree, and I really don't have a prediction for Peters Township and Bell Vernon. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns there, and after seeing what Connellsville was able to do to Bell Vernon, you have to like their chances of getting into the finals here. So, but Peters Township they're sort of an enigma here. We're not really sure what they're going to bring us in terms of competing with some of these bigger name schools. So, it should be interesting.
Subsection 3A, Knock over Highlands 60-18. Seneca Valley over Butler 54-12. Mars over Pine Richland 44-26. Seneca Valley 5-0. Mars 4-1. Butler 3-2. Pine Richland 2-3. Knock 1-4. Highlands 0-5. 3B, Hampton over Indiana 52-18. North Allegheny over North Hills 50-30. Shaler over Fox Chapel 42-34. North Allegheny over Shaler 42-31. Hampton at 5-0. North Allegheny 4-1. Shaler 3-2. Indiana 2-3. Fox Chapel 1-4. North Hills 0-5. Section 3 will be held at Hampton. Hampton will be wrestling Mars at 6 o'clock. Seneca Valley against North Allegheny. Winners at 7:15, third place at 7:15. The fifth place match will be at Shaler, and Shaler will be wrestling Butler for the winner to get in there. Should be a good one between Shaler and Butler. But what do you think of Section 3?
I think Seneca Valley is going to come out on top here, and I know our friend Coach Kevin Wildrick is not going to be happy with us putting all the pressure on and talking about Seneca Valley again, but it's the time has come to unleash them, if you will, to let people know. I mean, this is what it comes down to. I mean, all the things that they were able to do during the regular season, it doesn't matter at this point. Now is when it really starts to matter, and I think Seneca Valley's it's theirs to lose. So I think they do run the table here.
you look at the Allegheny tournament, which we're going to get into a little bit later on in the show. North Allegheny, they'll finish first. They had a strong showing at their Allegheny County Tournament. Hampton finished in third, and they've had a good run this regular season and being undefeated. Can North Allegheny start to pick up some momentum, or Hampton, and pull off an upset?
No. I mean, it's just no. I don't think it's possible. I mean, I hate to be blunt like that, but I mean, there's not enough firepower behind those teams. I mean, yeah, they have a lot of. They're a solid. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're a solid program, a solid team, but there's just some areas where they're too weak at, and I think Seneca Valley is just such a well balanced team. Especially when you talk about from 106 to 152, I mean, they're so balanced that it's going to be tough they're going to, North Allegheny's could win a few up top. I mean, Derek Devine's obviously favored there. Hoover's, who's wrestling tough recently. Those guys are going to push Seneca Valley, but I just can't see. I'm very high on Seneca Valley in the way that they've competed this year. They've been battle tested. They've been to Power8, King of the Mountain. They're ready for this. So I really don't see either Hampton or North Allegheny pushing Seneca Valley.
Kevin, I'm trying for you. I really am.
Look, I'm sorry. And I mean,
I think for Seneca Valley, though, if you talk about how a lot of times they don't want to get it in their head. I mean, that's North Allegheny and Hampton. They're having good tournaments, could carry momentum. I think that's the only thing that they have going into this. I agree, though. Seneca Valley, depth wise, is the top dog, but.
And you look at North Allegheny, and North Allegheny, they've been there. A lot of these guys have been to the state tournament, competing on the team tournament. A lot of these guys, Seneca Valley, a lot of this is just new to them being a really good team. A lot of these guys are individually tough, but from a team aspect, a lot of them haven't experienced a lot of team success. So clearly North Allegheny has that upper hand in the fact that a lot of these guys have been there before. I still don't think, I really do think the time's ripe right now for Seneca Valley to make some noise across the WPIAL. I mean, I'm not saying they're, going to run through everybody, but I think they're going to push it.
Subsection 4A, Waynesburg over Central Catholic 65-5, and their head coach, Joe Throckmorton, will be joining us here in just a little bit. Cannon McMillan over Trinity 39-22, and in that match, one match to note, I thought we'd want to talk about Martini beats Benny 7-3. Good win for Martini from Trinity.
Yeah, and he's been a little bit up and down, and it looks like he's on the upward path right now, so that's good for him. And always like to see Trinity battling tough, especially my father Tom Upson. He's definitely excited to see Trinity being relevant right now.
Montour over Chartiers Valley 37-31. So Cannon McMillan at 5-0, Waynesburg 4-1, Trinity 3-2, Montour 2-3, Chartiers Valley 1-4, Pittsburgh Central Catholic 0-5. 4B Hopewell over Newcastle 46-24, Ambridge over Blackhawk 44-27, West Allegheny over Moon 35-28. West Allegheny at 5-0, Moon 4-1, Ambridge 3-2, Blackhawk 2-3, Hopewell 1-4, Newcastle 0-5. Section 4 will be at West Allegheny on Wednesday. West Allegheny will be wrestling Waynesburg at 6, Cannon McMillan and Moon at 6, winners at 7:15, third place at 7:15. The fifth place match will be at Ambridge, and it'll be Ambridge wrestling Trinity. Winner gets into the team tournament. And yes, Mr. Upson, I like Trinity to get to the team tournament.
Well, good for you.
But Cannon McMillan Waynesburg, I think that's the story here in Section 4.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And other than Kiski and Hempfield, the one match I'm really looking forward to is Waynesburg and Cannon Mac in a rematch, because are things going to be any different? You look at the first matchup, and you asked me a few weeks back is what can they do to make any changes? And this is going to be a tough match again. I mean, this is going to be a really battle between these two perennial programs here, and I think Cannon Mac's got to feel good about their last result, and they've wrestled tough throughout the last few weeks. So, but Waynesburg, they're not going to go away. That's for sure.
And to talk a little bit more about that match and more, we are pleased to be joined by the head coach from Waynesburg, Joe Throckmorton. So, Joe, you guys have a section championship coming up on Wednesday. You guys will be traveling to West Allegheny. I'm sure the big match, the one everyone's talking about, is your potential rematch against Cannon McMillan, but I'm sure you're not looking too far ahead. Talk a little about your first matchup against West Allegheny. What do you see from those guys?
Oh, they're a very good team. They've been good in the last few years, and they've got, young kids coming in, freshmen coming in. They're good. So, I'm not going to pull the Mike Tomlin Steeler or look ahead to the Patriots. This is a very good team, and we respect them like crazy, and we have to wrestle very, very well to have a chance against these guys. They're good.
Is it tough at all to have that conversation with the team about not looking ahead, not looking towards Cannon McMillan?
Not really, because they know, not only we don't get to see these teams because they're in the opposite subsection, so not only is it important for the team event, but it's still important for Section 2, for their section seating. So, even if they were thinking about looking ahead, they got to worry about those individual matchups in their own section. So that keeps them from looking ahead.
I know we talked about you don't want to look at pull a Mike Tomlin on this, but Cannon McMillan, obviously you guys had a tough battle with them during the regular season. Is there anything you look at the matchup that you guys think, okay, we could make some changes, we could pull this one off?
Well, even just wrestling exactly the same matchups and everything that we had before, I think there was like 5 or 6 matches that went down to within a point or two of each other, and I've learned years ago that when the coaching staff and everybody else gets more excited and maybe more important than what the wrestlers or the guys actually doing it, then it usually doesn't work out. And we've done a lot of work since then. We were also kind of. We had been through Beast and PAW08 and a lot of tough dual meets. And so coming in there, maybe we were a little banged up here and there or whatever, whether it's mental or physical. And since then, we've had, about a month to recuperate. And we've also really, concentrated. And that's what we try to do. That's why we have such a nasty beginning of the year, is because our ultimate goal is, getting on the podium, the top of the podium in Hershey. And so we really strive in trying to, draw a line in the sand right after, Beast, PAW08, Canonsburg, that those first couple matches in January, and say, okay, now what are we going to do? Each individual kid to get better for the state, sections, regionals, and states. And I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to get them to improve throughout the year. And that's you kind of got to do that because you can't peak at all times. And so that's what we're doing right now.
And Coach, you talked about just being battle tested, going to Beast and PAW08 and looking at some of the guys this year that are really making an impact for you. You had the Henson brothers. You got a guy like Trey Howard, who's always been sort of on the cusp of doing really big things. I remember last year at the Beast, he pulled up a huge upset. But you look at it, and are there any guys that are really surprising you this year? I know you have a really tough freshman, Luke Augustine. You've been able to insert him into the lineup. Is it a good problem to have a lot of these just, a lot of depth at different weights?
Yeah, we don't have tons of depth. We have a couple guys, that's our but we do have, where we have guys, they're pretty good if they're backups. And yes, it does. Most of the time, unfortunately, you got to, decide when you start bumping around like that, you got to watch how much you do it in a dual meet, because it can get out of hand and may save you one match down where you thought, but it may cost you another one up below. So normally we wrestle pretty much straight up, and some of the matches we were able to get Luke in this year was probably matches that we didn't need maybe some of our starters were banged up or needed rest a little bit, and that's why we were able to get him in there. But for the most part, and it also is about the scent plans and all that stuff. So we're pretty much, doing that. But there is a couple, I'm sure they've got a couple options since they've seen since they've seen the first dual meet, and, we may, whatever, you got some guys that weigh in the same weight classes and things like that. So, it may, it really, and I always tell my guys, nobody walks on a mat. I don't know sometimes till it's 15 seconds before the match who's going to go out.
Right.
And so that's why they're all ready, warmed up, ready to go. And as soon as depending on who's supposed to go out that's what they have to be prepared for.
How do you keep track of all the brothers? I mean, you can't turn around 15 seconds before and say Henson or Howard, because you got 18 sets of brothers there. How do you keep track of all those guys?
Yeah, it's the first time we've had. The Observer did an article on it earlier this year, but we have 4 sets of brothers, and it's pretty cool. I mean, wrestling's really a family sport. Sometimes it's hard to get them all in the same 4 years, but it's definitely a unique situation, and every single one of them. Had 4 kids, that I raised, and you learn that even though they're brothers and sometimes sisters, they're all different. They're we're put on earth to do different things, and so you really, as far as the coaching end of it, you don't really do much different than if they weren't brothers, but every now and then, it just depends on what the situation is. But it's a very unique and makes it pretty tight together knit group.
Now, this team, I know I have a lot of people that said, man, Waynesburg's really come out of nowhere. And for you, it's probably a little bit different because you've known where these guys have been coming from. Caleb Morris, Kyle Hammett, these guys that have been there ever since they were freshman year. Obviously, having the Hensons, Jackson, and Wyatt coming in helps, but you've seen these guys progress through Pee-wees all the way up, and that has to say a lot about the Waynesburg program and watching these guys come up through the ranks. Right.
Yeah, actually, of course, I know nobody probably believes it, but I had absolutely nothing to do with them, being in Waynesburg as far as that's concerned. But I will tell you what I'm kind of proud of is that, of course, their dad's the world champ, and I'm glad to have him on our team. But like Ed Beast, I'd have been pretty upset if Jackson was the only one in place, and I end up having 3 guys place on our guys plus him, which made a 4th. And then same thing pretty much I think I had 5 or 6 place at PAW08. So not that they're not a great addition. And the biggest thing, and I will tell it to this day, the most important thing that any wrestler will ever have is workout partners. Right. Coaches are really not that important. I mean, the workout partners that they deal with every day in the room is what's very important to get them to the next levels. And when you always see it when there's one really good guy, there's usually another one around them, and that just makes it. When you got I got a group full of them right now that battle each other like crazy in the room, which makes them all better.
Yeah, sort of like Coleman Scott and Drew Headley. I think those guys made each other better, right?
Well, hey, I to this day, there's a reason why Coleman wasn't a 4-time state champ. The only kid in the whole state of Pennsylvania that could beat him was Drew Headley, because he would have won. He would have won as a freshman. Right. So that just goes to show you how good they push each other. Right. Yes.
Joe, you and I had a chance to talk at PAW08, and you mentioned that Waynesburg has a smaller enrollment and could wrestle in AA, but you just elect to go up to AAA each year. A lot of people don't know the reason why you do that. Could you explain why?
Sure. It's definitely not because we think we're too good for AA. I will tell you that right now. I have so much respect for the individuals in that, in the AA, whether it's a regional or the state tournament, there's lots of great. The difference is really the depth. And, a lot of it's the team stuff as far as your good quality wrestlers and making sure that they have matches. And, even in our section matches, all of our good guys usually get matches. And I know there's a tendency just because of enrollment alone, sometimes AA have a lot of forfeits. And I'm not saying every now and then there's not a AAA school out there that does, but chances are there's a better chance that your guys are going to get to wrestle. And, we have trained our guys from a young age that, you travel all over the area, all over the country, and wrestle the best of the best. And like I said, not that AA is not, but it's just that depth. It makes you battle tested at states. It's very difficult to get to a AAA state tournament through our region. But I will tell you right now, you look at most of the results, it prepares you for Hershey. And if you can get there, there's a very good chance that you're going to place and place high. And, my guys can't take any days off. If they take a day off, they will not even make Hershey, let alone, place in the regional tournament. So that's kind of why we do. And it's just a kind of a mindset that we've started and have kept on the tradition for a long time now. And we think it's the best place for us.
Yeah, and definitely look forward to seeing you this coming week against Cannon, McMillan, West Allegheny, and the likes. Coach, thanks for joining us on the show, and best of luck here this coming week.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me again.
Thanks again to Joe Throckmorton for joining us on the show. And I always, you get that question all the time about why Waynesburg wrestles up, and I always found it interesting. And he and I talked about a Powerade, and he gave the same exact answer here on the show. It's the depth. He doesn't like the fact that you go to these matches and you only see 4 or 5 matches. It's about being able to go to matches and wrestle 10, 11, 12 matches. Even if you do have a forfeit or 2, you're not giving up 7 or 8 going to a high school.
And I think a lot of people forget the fact that Waynesburg is actually, when enrollment is a factor, they're a AA size school, and because they've been AAA for so long. And as he said, I mean, that's tradition. That's the way it is at Waynesburg, and they've done pretty well with it for the last how many years. So why change it now? Can
you imagine if they were AA and the fact that their matchups with Burrell every year? Oh. I mean, they wrestled the last might be 3 years now that they've wrestled each other, and they've been epic battles between those two over the last 3 years. Imagine that in a WPIAL championship.
Yeah.
It'd be intense.
It would be, but they're still really good in AAA too. So we're going to see, we're going to potentially see that battle, play out in the next couple of weeks here, especially when you look at the Cannon Mac match, and then going into the district tournament. So yeah, Waynesburg's very impressive, the way they wrestle. And I love the way that Coach Throckmorton talked about just tradition and just the way that they compete.
You look at the seeds, and by the way, we want to quickly mention we'll have another show coming up for you on Thursday. It'll be a team tournament preview show breaking down the AAA and AA brackets as well as recapping the section championships. For AAA, no matter the result of Cannon, McMillan, Waynesburg, I think they're both top 4 seeds. Would you agree with that?
I would. It would be silly if they weren't.
Outside of a Hempfield upset over Kiski, I think it's going to be Kiski, Seneca Valley, Canamac, and Waynesburg 1 through 4 in some order.
In some order, yeah. I mean, like you said, barring Hempfield pulls an upset against Kiski, I can't see anyone outside of those 4 being in the top 4 seeds.
And then Hempfield probably being a strong 5, potentially.
Yes, Hempfield being a strong 5, and I think that's probably the most accurate way that's going to play out.
Let's slide down to AA now. In 1A, Burgestown over Chartiers Houston 48-25. Fort Cherry over Washington 35-24. Avella and South Park scheduled for February 7th. So Burgestown 5-0, Fort Cherry 4-1, Chartiers Houston 3-2, South Park and Avella 1-3, Washington 0-5. 1B, Freedom over Southside 45-27, Beaver over Laurel 42-30, Laurel over Central Valley 51-12, Freedom 5-0, Beaver 4-1, Southside and Laurel and Elwood City all at 2-3, Central Valley at 0-5. Southside gets that third place nod though, thanks to their head-to-head victories. So you look at Section 1, and it'll be held at Freedom. Freedom will wrestle for Cherry, Burgestown against Beaver at 6 o'clock, and the winners wrestling at 7:15, third place at 7:15. Southside will host Chartiers Houston. Winner gets in for 5th place. Freedom, especially after the Brookville Ultimate Duels, which we'll talk about in a minute, and their matchup that they had against South Fayette. But right now, I'd say Freedom, the favorite going into this one.
Yeah, I would agree that Freedom's the favorite, but I wouldn't look past some Burgestown or. But I would say Freedom's is the favorite going into this.
Subsection 2A, Jefferson Morgan over West Green 39-18, McGuffey over Best Center 40-27, Bentworth over Mapletown 48-24, McGuffey 5-0, Best Center 4-1, Jefferson Morgan 3-2, Bentworth 2-3, Mapletown 1-4, West Green 0-5. Subsection 2B, Derry over Mount Pleasant 43-31, a little bit closer I think than some people may have thought. Southmoreland over York 42-27, Elizabeth Ford over Fraser 69-0. Thane Lawrence did not wrestle, and for some of those after seeing Fraser getting wipe clean. Derry at 5-0, Elizabeth Ford 4-1, Mount Pleasant 3-2, Southmoreland 2-3, Yock 1-4, Fraser 0-5. Section 2 will be at Derry. Derry will take on Best Center. McGuffey will take on Elizabeth Forward. Those matches at 6 o'clock. 7:15 for the finals. 7:15 for third. Mount Pleasant hosts a fifth-place match. They'll take on Jefferson Morgan. First and foremost, Jeff, are you surprised that Mount Pleasant kept it closer against Derry?
I mean, I am, and I'm not at the same time, because Mount Pleasant and Derry have such a strong tradition of wrestling each other tough. And, maybe I'm not saying we put Derry, high up on a pedestal, but I think Mount Pleasant came to wrestle, and I think that they battled them tough. So not really surprised, but I think if Derry wants to prove that they're in the conversation with Burrell, they're going to have to wrestle better.
Maybe the wake-up call Derry needed, because they're going to have a tough one against McGuffey. Probably I would say this one will probably be the best AA matchup. We'll talk about Burrell and South Fayette in a minute, but I think this one's probably the best one in AA here this coming week.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
Subsection 3A, Avonworth over South Allegheny 48-27. Keystone Oaks over Carlington 54-20. South Fayette beats Quaker Valley 51-18. South Fayette at 5-0, Quaker Valley 4-1, Keystone Oaks 3-2, Avonworth 2-3, Carlington 1-4, South Allegheny 0-5. Summit Academy over Riverview 45-33 in 3B. Burrell over Valley 60-12. It was Burrell 3-0, Valley 2-1, Summit Academy 1-2, Riverview 0-3. Section 3 will be at Burrell. Burrell will wrestle Quaker Valley. South Fayette will wrestle Valley at 6 o'clock. Winners at 7:15. Third place at 7:15. The fifth place match will be at Summit Academy. They'll take on Keystone Oaks. Win and you're in. Burrell and South Fayette, they did not wrestle at the Brookville Ultimate Duels. They could have, but they did not. It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out here on Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't happen then, but it's going to happen, next. So I hope it does play out for us, and we could see that match happen. But Burrell took some lumps over the weekend, but that was no shame to them, because they wrestled some of the toughest teams in the state.
You look at AA, Burrell coming in as the favorite. They win their section. They would be the number 1 seed. But how does it go from there? You have Freedom, who comes in with a higher pedigree. You have South Fayette, who also comes in with the pedigree. But then you have Derry and McGuffey. It's going to be interesting to see who gets the 2 and the 3. It's always a good argument, because you want to stay away from that top half with Burrell.
I'll play it this way. If Derry wins their section, if they win Section 2, I think they're the second seed. I think it's Burrell and Derry as the second seed. I think it's just a matter of what is that third and fourth. I mean, if McGuffey, can you put McGuffey in the top 4? Like you said, South Fayette, whether they wrestle tough. Freedom as well. I think 3 and the 4. If Derry loses to McGuffey, how can McGuffey not be number 2, 3, or 4? I mean, they have to be in the top 4.
Right, and I would say the match that we're going to talk about in a minute for the Brookville Ultimate Duels, Freedom beat South Fayette over the past weekend, 37-30. That one really probably determined the seed potentially for a 3 and a 4.
I think if you're smart and you look at it, absolutely it does. I mean, you look at that match and you say, yeah, that's a good result for seeding purposes when you talk about the district.
Because how else do you separate them?
Right, exactly. So I think that was a good thing that they did wrestle. But yeah, Freedom, I mean, they have to be in the conversation. But outside of Burrell, I think Derry's going to come out and win their section. I do think that they're going to beat McGuffey, but I still don't think that they may not have enough for Burrell. Burrell's they're pretty tough.
And since we've mentioned it several times, let's go ahead and talk about the Brookville Ultimate Duels, and then we'll get to the non-section scores from around the WPIAL. But Reynolds ends up winning the Brookville Ultimate Duels. They were 5-0. Brookville at 4-1. Chestnut Ridge 3-2. Burrell 1-3. Freedom 1-4. South Fayette 0-4. Some of the results, Burrell, again, did not wrestle South Fayette, but Burrell did beat Freedom 41-22. Freedom did beat South Fayette 37-30. Burrell had a couple of close matches, but they obviously struggled against Reynolds, but they had closer matches with Chestnut Ridge and with Brookville than the other 2.
Yeah, and you had 5 top-ranked teams in the state here. You had number 1 Reynolds, number 3 Brookville, number 4 Chestnut Ridge, number 8 Burrell, And, of course, you had Freedom as well coming in at number 22. So a lot of depth, a lot of power here. So, Reynolds, I wasn't surprised to see them come out on top. They've always wrestled in the Ultimate Duels pretty tough. But as you said, South Fayette, they get put down by Chestnut Ridge 65-3. That was sort of a lopsided win. But Burrell and Brookville, they wrestled tough. Burrell comes out and puts up 23 to Brookville's 39. So they did battle them tough. But then you said Brookville just takes care of business against South Fayette, winning 58-6. But you look at Burrell and Freedom right here, 41-22. There was a whole lot of bonus points for Burrell. Burrell caught, I think, 3 or 4 wins by fall, and that was really the difference here between Freedom and Burrell, and even Ian Oswalt coming in and getting a 5-1 decision over Kenny Dushek is a pretty big win for him. And overall, I think Burrell wrestled very, very tough. Corey Christie coming away with a 1-0 decision over Chase Kamara. There was a lot of things that went Burrell's way, so I think it was a good tournament for them, despite the record where you're looking at, they didn't wrestle that tough. Well, yeah, they did. There was just a lot of tough teams there.
So things could change with that Burrell-Freedom matchup, but there's a lot of points to make up for Freedom in this one.
Yeah, I would. It's definitely there's a lot to make up for, but Burrell, I think, just solidified themselves as the top team in the WPIAL.
And as tough as Burrell is, you hear Corey Christie, we've had Josh Shields on the show. They've mentioned how they want to come away from Hershey with a medal. Are they close to that?
I look at some of the results, and for as tough as they wrestled, I mean, the gap between them and Reynolds, who's the number 1 team in the state, so clearly that's where you're aiming for. 48-13, Reynolds comes out on top over Burrell, so they've got a lot of making up to do in that aspect. But outside of Reynolds and you look at Southern Columbia and Brookville, those teams like that. Burrell can compete, but it's going to be hard for them to come away with a medal at Hershey. But I would never count out Coach Josh Shields and his team there. They always find a way to come through when it comes to wrestling in Hershey.
And we mentioned the score of the Freedom and South Fayette match. Freedom wins 37-30. Could determine a seed. One could be a 2 or a 3. The other one could be in that 4 or 5 mix. But when you look at it from a bracket perspective, top 3 advance to the team tournament, and that could end up being a match that's a winner into the state championships. Can this go the other way for South Fayette?
Oh, absolutely. I think it can. That was a tight bout with a lot of regular decisions here. You just look at going through and seeing all the regular decisions for both teams. Michael Cusick comes away with a 2-1 tiebreaker win over Chase Kamara at 152 pounds. So you flip that over, and that changes things more in the favor for Freedom. But this is absolutely this. I mean, it was only a 7-point match, right? You look at 37-30. ZJ Ward wrestled tough for Freedom. He gets a major decision. Kenny Dushek comes away with a 4-2 win over Colin Dunn. So there's some things that South Fayette can do to improve that, not giving up some bonus points and stealing a few victories like they did at 152. But talk about a pivotal time to get a good win for seeds. I mean, Freedom over South Fayette, like you said, it would be dumb if they didn't take that into account when seeding the WPIAL team duels.
Especially when we mentioned Darian McGuffey is essentially the best match coming up here this coming Wednesday. I would have to think the winner of that match is a 2 or a 3 with Freedom. If they win their section, which I would think they would, after beating South Fayette, they would be a 2 or a 3. And South Fayette, because of the fact that they've lost to Freedom, and now if they lose to Burrell on Wednesday, now they're looking, I would think, at the 5.
Yeah, that could very well be, and only time will tell.
Some non-section matches: Fort Cherry over Central Valley 36-12, Laurel over Blackhawk 48-30, Albert Gallatin over Jefferson Morgan 36-33, Armstrong over Indiana 36-34. The 2 matches we'll briefly talk about both involve Kiski. Kiski defeats Connellsville 56-18, and that one did have an upset.
Yeah, it absolutely did. At 195 pounds, Danny Starr from Kiski takes out Nate Ansell from Connellsville. He pins him in 3 minutes and 5 seconds. A lot of people would say, well, that's not that big of an upset. And you're right, it may not be, but Nate Ansell was a state qualifier last year for Connellsville. He's been out of lineup. He wasn't at Escape the Rock, so he's still getting back into form. But Danny Starr, that's a big win for him, for his confidence boost, because he's came into the season with high expectations. I think he hit a few bumps along the way, but this has got to, if he's getting hot, it's the right time to do it, especially with Kiski coming on strong.
And we look at the top 4 teams. I think we've talked about it all season long. Kiski, Canemak, Waynesburg, Seneca Valley. And now we're starting to maybe throw Hempfield into that mix. And I think the biggest thing that we take away from this Connellsville result, and the fact that Connellsville lost big to Waynesburg as well, is that Connellsville potentially could be the Section 2 champion. But they aren't at that level of those top 4 teams.
No, and that happens year in and year out. You'll see that a team may win a section and they're not even in the top 5 that you would say, because there's so much clumping, if you will, especially in Section 1.
And the other match was Kiski against Burrell, the grudge match. We talked about it going on as we taped last week. Kiski does defeat Burrell 40-25, and there were some good individual matchups here.
Yeah, Corey Christie from Burrell comes out and beats Jack Bloomer 6-4. Those two have wrestled a few times in the past before. Sean Gates comes out and beats Nick Delp 6-1. So Burrell's on the receiving end of 2 big wins for them, but it still wasn't enough for them to take out Kiski, who wins 40-25. But this is a grudge match, as you said. I mean, these two teams wrestle each other so tough, and it's always fun to see it. Those teams come at it and going at it. I love it for the sport.
Big tournament over this past weekend. It was the Allegheny County Championships, featuring a number of WPIAL and city schools as well. Overall, 35 teams in the tournament. North Allegheny, we mentioned it a little bit earlier in the show. They win the team title with 207.5 points. Thomas Jefferson was number 2. Hampton number 3. Bethel Park number 4. Upper St. Clair rounds out your top 5. When you look at some of the individual brackets, 106 pounds had an upset right in the first match of the opening round, and I'm surprised that this wrestler was seated so low. Max Stediford of North Allegheny facing top seed Joey Fisher of South Park right in the open. Stediford ends up winning by fall in that match, and Joey Fisher of South Park comes back for 3rd. So we were kind of looking forward to a Fisher-Redinger match just to see where they're at with both guys being in AA, but that'll have to wait. Connor Redinger did end up beating Stediford in the finals 9-2.
So what we learned from this is Connor Redinger is very good, and I think there's a reason why he's top 3 in the state. Joey Fisher, I think that was a terrible draw for him to get Max Stedford in the first round. I mean, are you kidding me? Fisher actually comes out, gets the opening takedown in that match. He gets a takedown, but Stedford escapes and then locks it up for a fall. But kudos for Fisher coming back and taking 3rd after suffering that defeat. But Connor Redinger is head and shoulders above the rest here. So ever since he dropped down from 113, he's a force to be reckoned with.
113 pounds, Ryan Sullivan wins the title, and he does it in tremendous fashion. 2 falls in attack, and I think I've mentioned how impressive he has been this season. He beats Frankie Benora of Moon by major decision, 11-2 in the finals.
And that is a number 1 versus number 2 in the state. Let that sink in. I mean, Ryan Sullivan, talking about separating himself from the rest of the field. This is a guy who sort of out of nowhere got to the state finals last year. I wouldn't say out of nowhere, but
right.
He surprised a lot of people, I think, outside of the WPIAL.
Especially with 106 being so competitive last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you see him this year, and, it wasn't a fluke. He's putting up big points. He's getting to his offense. I mean, when he turns it on, he turns it on. We saw him in the state finals last year, wasn't really getting his offense going, and now look at him. He's defeating Frank Benora 11-2, a guy who's number 2 in the state. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So, Ryan Sullivan's wrestling very, very tough right now. 120
pounds, Tyler Kosick of Hampton is your champion. He won by a 4-2 decision over Freddie Junko of North Allegheny in the finals. Junko had to beat Nathan Lucas of Pine Richland in the semis 2-1 to get there. Lucas comes back for 3rd.
Yeah, and I thought it was a good tournament by Freddie Junko to beat Lucas. But when you look at who came out on top, Tyler Kosick here, I think he really starting to prove himself. I mean, Hampton's one of those teams where you don't see him a whole lot during the year, but the Allegheny County Tournament is a time when they really shine, and I think Tyler had a big win here. I think that's going to propel him in the rankings.
126 pounds, Sam Hilligus of North Hills. He had to default out of the Allegheny County Tournament last year. This year he dominates. 5 total falls to win the title. He pins Jacob Downing of North Allegheny for the championship.
Yeah, and it wasn't close before that. I mean, Hilligus is just wrestling on a different level right now, and I think we're seeing how special he really is. And Downing's, I mean, he's not a bad wrestler. He's pretty tough, and he had a nice win against Zach Wright from Hampton in the semifinals. But one of the names I'm very impressed with here is Zach Macy from Chartiers Valley. Macy loses to Sammy Hilligus, but he bounces back to take third. He beats Dylan Winters along the way, Kellen Lynch, and then he beats Zach Wright 5-3 in sudden victory to take third. So Zach Macy's a guy who's putting things together at the right time.
132 pounds. How about the dominating performance by John Rocco Cazales of Quaker Valley? 5 total falls to win the title. He only got out of the first period once in the quarterfinals, and that was a second period fall for Rocco Cazales. He pins Garrett Reinsfelder, who placed at the Powerade tournament in the first period in a minute and 13 seconds. Reinsfelder from Shaler.
I mean, talk about a guy who's dangerous. Rocco Cazales, who is the best name in wrestling, is definitely wrestling to a higher level right now. I mean, just dismantling his opponents this year, especially at the Allegheny County Tournament. So, watch out for Rocco Cazales this year. He's going to surprise a few people.
And you have number 1 in the state right now, correct?
Yeah, I mean, he is. He is number 1 in state, but it's still a number 1 that you're saying, you know, it's not as clear cut as a lot of other weights. There's a lot of toss ups at 132 pounds. So yeah, I mean, he gets the respect, and he's number 1 for a reason. Allegheny County Tournament just showed why he is number 1.
138 pounds. Justice Jones of Carrick comes into this one as the top seed and probably the best City League wrestler coming into this, but he ends up dropping a semifinal loss to Alex Weber of Thomas Jefferson 8-2, and Weber then wins the title by beating Thomas Kyle of Upper St. Clair 4-2.
Probably one of the biggest performances of the tournament was Alex Weber for me personally, looking at what he had to go through. Ben Salas, he beats him 8-2, and then Justice Jones, as you said, from Carrick, who is highly ranked in the state, he beats him 8-2, and then Tom Kyle, a guy who's been consistent throughout his career, he beats him 4-2. So 3 matches right in a row for Alex Weber to come out on top on all those. I think we're starting to see some hard work paying off for Alex Weber, and Justice Jones does come back to take third, but Alex Weber definitely moving up in the rankings. And
a big reason why Thomas Jefferson had the success that they did in this tournament. 145 pounds, Nick Acuna of Moon. He was your champion. He defeats Grant Walnoa of Upper St. Clair in the finals 4-0.
Yeah, Acuna's a guy who was a state medalist last year, quietly a state medalist. But he's had some tough matches. He beat Alex Hornfeck this year from Mars in sudden victory. So he's been tested, and I think this Allegheny County tournament's a good benchmark for him to see where he's at and where he needs to go in order to get back on the podium at Hershey.
152, your champion from Pine Richland, Cole Spencer. He ends up beating a couple of good names here. Hunter Kernan of Bethel Park, he pins him in the semis, and then he pins Nico Marcico of Montour in the finals. In all, 4 falls in a tech for Cole Spencer.
So you know how I said Alex Weber impressed me? Yeah, Cole Spencer really impressed me. Talk about a freshman coming in for Pine Richland, and not a shabby football player either. He plays quarterback as well, Greg. I don't know if you know that or not. But Cole Spencer, as you said, just dominates, and I actually wrote a little write-up on the freshman that really stood out at the Allegheny County Tournament, and Cole Spencer was one of them. And Cole Spencer in the finals, pinning Nico Marcico of Montour. That was a big win for him. Both of those guys are ranked in the state. So, Cole Spencer, you're going to want to watch out for this kid.
160 pounds, Luke Stout of Mount Lebanon, your champion. He defeats Vincenzo Rosso of Central Catholic in the finals 3-1. And I got to tell you, I was briefly looking through these late in the evening when Frank Volcano sent these out, and I seen Stout over Montgomery 10-2, and I thought, wait a second, Jason Montgomery dropped and Stout beat him by a major decision? And then I look back and it was Luke Montgomery that he beat in the semifinals.
Yeah, and Luke is just coming back in the lineup, but Luke Stout comes away with a nice major decision over him. But in the finals against, Rauzo from Central Catholic, he beats John Hoover in the semis 5-1. I was very impressed with that victory for him to beat John Hoover, who was the second seed, and then wrestle Luke Stout tough in the finals. I thought that was a good performance for him, but Luke Stout gets the job done, and there's a reason why he's ranked as high as he is.
170 pounds. It was all Jason Montgomery as he picks up 3 falls and a tech fall to win the title. He defeats in the finals Connor Sidoric of Baldwin, and Sidoric ends up getting to the finals with a 7-5 win in the quarters over Keegan Forsyth of Quaker Valley, and a good win, a good trip to the finals for the Baldwin Junior.
Yeah, it absolutely was. But as you said, Jason Montgomery's just sort of head and shoulders ahead of the competition here, and I wasn't surprised to see him do it in such a dominating fashion.
182 pounds, your champion was from Hampton, and it was Justin Hart. He defeats Max Shaw of Thomas Jefferson in the final 6-3. Shaw beats Jeff Magan of Quaker Valley 16-11 in a wild one in the semifinals. Hart, meanwhile, he defeats Zach Carsey of Fox Chapel in the quarters, Noah Seaberger from Bethel Park in the semifinals before beating Shaw in the finals.
So I can't tell you how many times I said Jake Hart instead of Justin Hart, his older brother who was a state champion for Hampton. Justin Hart, the freshman, he was highly ranked in our top incoming freshman report, and there's a reason why. As you said, Zach Carsey, a guy who was a state qualifier 2 years ago for Fox Chapel, he beats him 3-1, and then in the finals beats Max Shaw, who was a state qualifier a year ago. Now Max Shaw, this was his first tournament competing. He's been out of the lineup up to this point, so still a good performance by Justin Hart to show as a freshman where he can potentially go throughout his career. So I'm really excited to see Justin competing against some of these top guys, and it was a good showing by him.
195 pounds, a couple of good wins for your champion, Shamil Zenaleov of Chartiers Valley. He defeats Nathan Mankey of North Hills in the semis 8-5 before beating Gary Hutchinson of Baldwin in the finals 9-3. Mankey did come back for third.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really good performance by Zenaleov from Chartiers Valley. I thought that semifinals win over Nathan Mankey was definitely a critical bout for him. And then beating Hutchinson in the finals as well. Those are the top 3 guys there finished. They're going to do well at the individual tournament coming up in a few weeks. But Harvey Rauch as well from USC, he takes 4th here. So deep weight class at 195. 220
pounds, Jake Slinger of Upper St. Clair. He was dominant. He wins the championship with 4 falls, and he gets his final pin over Donovan Kutchember of Fox Chapel in the finals.
Yeah, and Slinger's, again, this is a weight that wasn't as deep as many of the others here, but Jake Slinger just showed why he's considered to be very highly ranked, getting 4 falls in all, really quick time. So he's peaking at the right time.
285 pounds, Gerald Brown of West Mifflin gets the title with 4 falls. He looked dominant here. He pins Deshaun Butler of Penn Hills in the semis, and then he pins Derek Devine of North Allegheny in the finals. Devine, meanwhile, won a tight 3-2 decision over Nathan Hoagland of Mount Lebanon in the semis.
Yeah, and you looked at this bracket, and the top 4 here all ranked top 20 in the state. Gerald Brown is a guy who shocked a lot of people last year when he took 4th at states. And he's number 2 in the state just behind Isaac Reed. So Gerald Brown is a guy who placed at Beast of the East this year. He's won some really good matches. So I wasn't surprised to see him win, but the way he did it was he just dominated. I mean, he pinned all 4 of his guys, 2 of which are ranked top 20 in the state. So Gerald Brown's definitely made a statement here at the county tournament. And as you said, Derek Devine beating Nathan Hoagland from Mount Lebanon, a guy who was a medalist at the Powerade tournament. A good win for him. So overall, a deep weight class at 285 as well.
And Deshaun Butler ends up winning in overtime over Hoagland for 3rd place. So we mentioned this a little bit earlier in the broadcast. We will have a show this coming Thursday. So next week, we won't have a show come out on Monday because we'll have the show on Thursday in place of. It'll be a team tournament preview show. We'll be breaking down the AAA and AA brackets, and we'll get a member of the WPIAL steering committee on the show as well to talk about how they came up with the seeds. We usually don't have too many arguments. They do a great job. But it'll be interesting to see, based on how the section results go Wednesday, what the brackets look like Thursday.
They're going to have a tougher year in 2018 seeding this tournament, especially if some things don't go, quote unquote, as planned. So they may have their hands full. You're right. In the last few years, we haven't had much, slack to give them, but I don't know. Maybe this year we will. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out after these section matches.
And again, all the matches will start at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, and then the finals at 7:15. And then make sure you stay with PA Power Wrestling, as we will have all of the updates for you from around the WPIAL. And we look forward to seeing how the results play out.
Yeah, and thanks to Waynesburg coach Joe Throckmorton for joining us on the show. And Greg, have you checked the weather for Thursday? Are there any chance of flurries that you may get stuck at your house? Or
Well, there might be.
Okay. Well,
I think if one snowflake comes down, I should just stay at home.
Apparently, that's the way you operate. So hopefully for the fans that you are able to suck it up and power through it. It's a third period. You're down by 2. You got to get a takedown here, Greg, so figure it out.
I'll tell you what, if you wear that Tom Brady jersey, though, again on Thursday.
Why are you lying to people and telling them I have a Tom Brady jersey on?
Well, you're lying to people saying that I can't drive in snow, so.
Oh, well. That's a little low blow saying I'm wearing a Tom Brady jersey. That's sacrilegious there, But, yeah, again, we're going to have another show for you on Thursday. You can stay tuned to all the rankings and updates that you need from across the state at papowerwrestling.com for all your wrestling needs. Follow us on Twitter at papowerwrestle. Friend us on Facebook. We're going to have updated rankings, individual and teams coming out on Wednesday of this week. So looking forward to seeing where guys have moved and teams, especially after the Brookville Ultimate Duels. There's a lot of movement going on. So looking forward to it, Greg. And we're in the thick of it right now. This is go time.
It's hard to believe this time next week we will have the team tournament to talk, going through the matches and seeing how it all breaks down.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and we'll be here every step of the way. So stay tuned to PA Power Wrestling for everything that you need.
And we're up on the WPIAL to get a full recap from District 7. From our broadcast partner, Jeff Upson, I'm Greg Warnock. Thanks for listening in to We're Up on the WPIAL.